will cover three basic networking scenarios to help you understand the OCA networking components, which we have covered till now, and how those components work together so that it will cover all the concepts which we have discussed during the last three sessions. Keeping in mind, be a lifelong learner. And I will just quote a famous quote: develop passion for learning. If you do, you will never cease to grow. Anthony J. D'Angelo. The quote from him. Now let's listen to the intro.
Welcome to the OTech Talks podcast, where it's all about working on technologies. You will hear the latest tech information, and your host, Kashif Manzoor, brings together product overviews, how-tos, best practices, tips and tricks, and troubleshooting techniques.
Welcome to OTech Talks podcast. Your host, Kashif Manzoor, is with you. Today's podcast session number is 86 overall. The session number is, which we started back in 2015. Today we will have our fourth session as part of the series to learn Oracle Cloud Infrastructure's essentials. And the topic for today is networking scenarios. We will cover three scenarios: a public subnet, scenario B, private subnet with a VPN, scenario C, public and private subnets with the VPN. And these are all taken from the standard documentations available on the internet, and I will put in the show notes. And this is all why we are doing it, to help you understand the networking service, the basic components of VCN. Till now we have covered all the basic concepts of VCN, cloud infrastructure networks, basic terms. Now, if you're new to the show and new to the podcast, Open Tech Talks is your weekly sandbox for technology insights, experimentation, and inspiration, with primary objective of learning and sharing. And why we do this one is just to learn and inspire each other. And this is what I'm getting inspired from you when you share your feedback, your comments with me, and I love that. And based on that one, if you're new to and you just joined the session, I would suggest you to go back and join session number 1 on the OCN or the OCI on the Oracle. And that was session number 83 overall. And you will get it on the otechtalks.tv podcast. Now, before we go to the topic, and I thought to just share with you, because and that hit me, I think, last week when I was doing the session, that the lifelong learning, this is term being used, is a form of self-initiated education that is focused on personal development. So lifelong learning is ongoing, voluntary, and self-motivated. It's a pursuit of knowledge for personal and professional reasons, and that's what we are doing. This is what we are helping each other. And that's the reason behind it. Social learning. That's I'm a strongest believer on that one. And why it matters, or it means to everyone to be a lifelong learner. There was a concept an old concept that when you'll graduate at high school or get a university degree and you're done with the education. That was an old traditional or a legacy concept. In the past, that may have been sufficient to land and keep with your circumstances, with your life, with your job, and that's it. And then when you get retired, or you will get early retired, or you will do your business, and even you will be doing your business. However, the concept of being learner has changed and has shifted. And I will take a few 2, 3, 4 more minutes to no more the concept learn to retire. And it changed into be agile and adaptable. And so what you need to do is you need to learn to unlearn. And that's what I'm doing it right now. So I'm learning and I'm sharing with you, then I'm doing it. And if you want to see it, then you need to go to the YouTube videos, which I'm documenting it as a fresher. That okay, I will start it, and then whatever the challenges I'm getting in it, I'm just getting it in the YouTube, in the channel, in the video. So learn, do, and then unlearn. So learn, do, reset. Learn, do, unlearn, then repeat. This is the cycle of a lifelong learner. And I will put it in, there is a very good chart, an image. I will put it in the on the blog, on the podcast. So if you want to go and get it and you want to see that one, then you need to just go to otechtalks.tv under the podcast on this session number, I think it's 86, you will find it. So to illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So our learning for today is learn, unlearn, and relearn. That's what we are doing it. So let's go back to our topic where we are going to discuss the networking scenarios, and these are available as part of Oracle's standard documentation under the concepts in the networking. I will put it in the show notes. And then just a disclaimer: these are a personal opinion, what I'm taking from the documents. Now, if we will go from a scenario A, which is a public subnet. Now, let's see, you have a virtual crowd network already set up, and you already set up a original public subnet. Now, definitely you want to see that, okay, you already have the separate availability domains based on the region, and then your VCN is connected to the internet gateway. The internet gateway is used for connectivity to the internet, and all these components are already in place. You also use the default security list, which has the default security rules, and it will get you started with the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And these rules enable typical required access, for example, inbound SSH connections and any type of outbound connections. Now you need to have the security rules only allow traffic. Any traffic not explicitly covered by security list rule is implicitly denied. So security rules are one way to control traffic in and out of the VCN resources, right? So you can also use the network security rules, which we used it. Now in the scenario A, where you will put a public subnet, and in the public subnet you will have your resources with a public IP address. Now these resources, when I say maybe your instance, where you want to put for example, a web instance, or you want to put a load balancer. So all these will have a public IP addresses in the public subnet. Now each subnet will have a default route table, default security list. Then you need to also have an internet gateway, which you will have internet gate access through the internet. And in this case, you will have a on-premise host must have public IP addresses to communicate with VCN resources over the internet. So your existing even on-premise network will also route through the internet gateway. So that's how your first scenario, where everything is coming from your on-premise internet network, from your office network through the public internet to the Oracle VCN or Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So in the components, we got it. We need the default security rule, route table. We need the security rules. We need to set it up. Public IP addresses on the public subnet, that is original subnet on the VCN. Then we need to have a default gateway that will enable us to reach to our on-premise network. Now then definitely you need to also have identity and access management policy. You need to grant security access to a policy by an administrator, your administrator, right? So you need to, if you want to use a console or REST APIs with SDK or a CLI command tool, then definitely you should be having a permission or authorized to manage your or work on your compartment to do all these activities. Now, if you want to set it up in your VCN, definitely you need to do creating. Number one, you need to create the top VCN. You need to create the regional public subnet. You need to create the internet gateway. You need to update the default route table to use the internet gateway. Then you need to update the default security list, and then create the instances in the separate availability domains on the public subnet. So these are 6 tasks which you need to do to enable the scenario A, where you have a public subnet. So it could be your web server or any application, or maybe you can have even a website or application which you hosted it on and you want to access through the public internet. So that's scenario number A. Scenario B, which is basically private subnet with a VPN. In this scenario, you will have a virtual cloud network with the regional private subnet. So earlier we created the scenario A, the public subnet. In scenario B here, you will create a private subnet. Now, definitely there will be servers in separate availability domains if you want to create based on the original situation that data center, if they have multiple availability domains for the region, for the redundancy you can put it in multiple availability domains. Now the VCN will have a dynamic routing gate, a DRG, and IPsec VPN. So DRG will enable to connect to the on-premise network through the IPsec VPN, and the VCN, you will not have a direct connection to internet. All the traffic will route to the on-premise network of the customer or your network through the IPsec VPN. Now, similar to the scenario A, definitely the subnet uses the default security list, which has default rules that are designed to make it easy, to get it started with Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. But these rules need to be updated. For example, to inbound SSH connections, and if you want to allow even outbound connections, so you need to do it. And then you need to also have a security list rules which allow the traffic, because anything or any traffic you need to explicitly allow in the security list. Otherwise, everything is denied. Now, definitely in this scenario, what we will do, we will add additional rules to default security list. Now, what we can create a custom security list for those rules. And then what we'll do, we will set up a subnet to use both the default security list and the custom security list. And we know that security lists are one way to control traffic in and out of the VCN resources. Now, what we will have in this scenario, we will have a subnet on the VCN with the regional private subnet. It will have a default route table, destination side route target. Destination side will be maybe 000/0, and the route target is DRG. Then we need to have a default security list. Then we need to have a DRG, dynamic routing gateway, which is enabled through the IPsec VPN onto customer premises equipment, which is commonly called as CPE. So that's your existing on-premise network if you have on that one. Now, definitely we are thinking, we use here in the IPsec VPN, but you can also utilize the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Fast Connect if you want to have a dedicated line connection between on-premise and between the OCI. Now, there are prerequisite to this scenario, because we said we need to have a VPN, right? So to set it up in VPN, we need to have the public IP address of the customer premises equipment. To enter into the VPN at the end of the VPN. And then we also need to have a static route for your on-premise network, because this scenario B, uses static routing for the VPN tunnels. You can, if you want to use this BGP dynamic routing, you can use it, but we will go with static routing. So so these two prerequisites are required. Then definitely you need to also have IAM policy in place. For example, compartment administration and all that, you must have that one. Right, and now you want to set up this scenario B with the public IP address. You need to have to go to the OCI console, and then you need to set up VCN and subnet. If it's new to you, don't worry. We have a video recorded, so you can go and watch over there on the OTechTalks.tv channel on YouTube, or even to the website, and you will find out. And where it will give you the step-by-step guidelines, directions that how to set up the VCN and subnet. Then you need to create the instances in the separate availability domains for redundancy. Then you need to have an IPsec VPN. You need to add IPsec VPN, and there is a very wizard type of processes available to how to set up VPN. Now definitely we need to have the static IP and a router and the on public IP address from the on-premise. So those are the prerequisites required. But otherwise, you need to set up VPN on your VCN, and then configure your CPE, basically customer premise and equipment. That if you're using, Fortinet or some other third-party tools, you can also do that one if you already have that one. So there are different options available, and you will be utilizing basically your existing on-premise network on that one. Now the key point in this one, that because we are only connecting or reaching to the instances through the on-premise network, through the DRG and then the IPsec VPN. So it's mean you must have configured through your network administrator your on-premise infrastructure that will allow you to communicate through the VPN tunnel to reach to the OCI VCN. And so you can, it should be up and running, right? So you can confirm it by checking with the get IPsec connection device status. This is also an API, you can check that one. So that's how we will be covering, we covered the scenario 2, where we set it up public subnet, and then we connect it through the DRG IPsec VPN to on-premise network. So now if you correlate the scenario A and scenario B, you can find out the mandatory components which are required to set it up, right? Now let's go to the third scenario. Scenario which we are going to cover today, it's targeting public and private subnets in a VCN. And this scenario is created with a VPN, again IPsec VPN, which we're using. Now in this example, it's a multi-tier setup. What it consists of is a VCN, virtual cloud network, with the regional public subnet to hold public servers, for example a web server, and then a regional private subnet to hold the private servers, for example a database servers. If you're coming with e-business suite background, you can think about it to put a server, a web server, or which is like an iRecruitment, and to a public subnet, and then you will have application and database server in a private subnet. You can have a load balancer or in a public subnet, and if you're using some Bastion host or a jump server, which to access it, I'll put it into the public subnet. And if you have some custom application, you want to keep your web servers, then web servers will be on the public subnet, and then your database and the core applications will be in the private subnets. And if you're coming from Hyperion, so the same way Hyperion web server will be on the public subnet, REST Hyperion Planning or Hyperion Core Foundation servers will be the private subnets with the database. Now, this VCN will have a dynamic routing gateway (DRG), which will be used with a VPN for connectivity to your on-premise network, right? Then instances in the public subnet have direct access to the internet by way of an internet gateway. So we will also configure internet gateway. If you remember, in the scenario A, we only talk about internet gateway with the public subnet. Then in the scenario B, we spoke about no internet gateway, only DRG through the IPsec VPN tunnel to the on-premise network. And in this scenario, all put together. That one. And then the instances which are in the private subnet and they want to create and have a connection to the internet, they will have a NAT gateway, right? For example, new patches, updates, or software need it. So they can reach out to the internet, but no one from the outside externally can do the inbound connection from the internet gateway. Now, definitely each subnet will use the default security list, then default rules that are designed or to use it. You will configure it. Now, these rules will enable traffic or required access. For example, inbound SSH connections and outbound connections. Then definitely we need to set it up security list rules which will allow the traffic. Any traffic not explicitly covered by a security list rule is denied. So security list is one of the way to control traffic in and out of the VCN resources. Now each subnet will have its own custom security list and custom route table with the rules specific to the needs of the subnet instances. Right? The default route table, which is always empty to start with, is not used, because what you will do, let's go in a one level down. You will have a VCN. In the VCN, for example, you will put a regional subnet or a public subnet. This public subnet will have a public subnet route table, destination CIDR block. Then it will have a route target, which is internet gateway. Then it will have a default security list. It will have custom security list for public subnet, right? If you go to the private subnet, then you will have private subnet route table. It will have a destination CIDR. Then it will have a route target with a DRG, and then it will have a two, right? A route table. One is to reach to the route to the DRG, and then another one is to the NAT gateway. Definitely, it will have a default security list, custom security list for private subnets. You will be connecting through the DRG to the IPsec VPN tunnel on-premise network through IPsec VPN. So VPN will need to be configured the way we configured in scenario B. We will cover in that one. Now, definitely the internet gateway will enable traffic to internet, and the NAT way will also. Internet will be two-way, inbound and outbound. So NAT gateway you can only pull if for software updates and all that. Now, that's the scenario B's basic concept. Now, definitely from the prerequisite, if you want to set up a VPN, we need to have public IP address of the customer network device which they're using it, right? And then we need to have a static routes of on-premise network because we're using a VPN. And if you want to use the Fast Connect dedicated line, then you can also have choice to use Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Fast Connect. You definitely also need to have an identity and access management policy, which the required resources, permissions, authorized access to your compartment where you're creating VCN and all that. Now, definitely you can have access to the console when you will have IP access to the compartment. So to use the console, you will need to start the 4 tasks. If we go from a tasks or steps point of view, that these 4 steps are: you need to set up the VCN and subnets. That's first step. You need to set up the create instances in separate availability domains. If you are not sure about how to do it, don't worry, we have a video, so you can go and check that one. Then the step 2 is create instances in the separate availability domains, for example, in private, public subnet, or the web server or database server. You need to have you need to add IPsec VPN to your VCN, configure the on-premise network, and then the step 4 is configure your on-premise router, which will allow the traffic from the on-premise network to Oracle VCN or OCI. All right, so these are all just a short steps on the 4th scenario. So we covered scenario A, scenario B, scenario C, which is with the public subnet, then the private subnet with the VPN, public and private subnets with the VPN or a fast connect. Now there are some advanced scenarios are also there, but I think I will park it and we will come back maybe in the later sessions, because my focus was to keep simple and which are easily understandable, because these are essentials, and for everyone we want to just keep it simple so that they will be on board quickly, and then they can start exploring, and then they can explore themselves what are the advanced scenarios, which are basically transit routing through a single VCN, then multiple DRGs and multiple VCNs. You can do that one also. So with this, I think thank you so much for joining the session. So we are done with this session number 4 on the scenarios. Have a wonderful and lovely life, and God bless you. Keep sending your messages and feedback, and please do share your feedback, and rate this podcast on iTunes, and be the lifelong learner and adapt to the habits of lifelong learner. And if you want to have want to work on habits, I would suggest you that the Atomic Habit book. I think that's a good book. Small steps, small actions will enable you to be the mindset of a lifelong learner. Have a blessed and wonderful life ahead. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the O Tech Talks podcast, and be part of Tech Talks at otechtalks.tv. It's a turf to share ideas, insights, and innovations.